Hey everyone, thanks for joining our Genesis podcast. Today, where we demystify complicated blockchain technology and explain in a very simple terms for so that everyone can understand. And today we're doing things a little different, but not too different. So we're still talking about blockchain technology, and but we're gonna talk about our project Move Network a little bit with our marketing manager. So I'm gonna hand over the microphone to him so that he can kind of run the show. All right, Martin, introduce yourself and let's start the show.
Yeah, that's it. So, as Bullet said, I am now responsible for the marketing of Move Network, and I will be joining a few more times here. So, guys will get probably used to me in the next episodes and so on. Hope we have a nice time in understanding some new terms and old terms reinvented with Move. And today's objective is to learn a bit more about the project, learn a bit more how it started, where we're going, and I mean, no one else could be better to explain this to us as Bulent, our CEO, our co-founder. So I'm certain we will have an amazing conversation, and all the listeners will understand exactly how Move It works and where we're at this moment, right? Yeah. So I guess we would start with the basics, right? So what exactly is Move Network? Assuming some people might view this and not even be familiar with Move, what Move is, what it does, and what exactly inspired the creation of such a project.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, really good question, and we do have a really good story, and that I like telling because it's a real, very organic story for us. And yeah, thanks for obviously asking the question, also being a part of our team. And so Move Network, we in short we describe it as the most secure layer 2 blockchain on Ethereum. We claim the security based on the language Move because we allow people or developers to run Move smart contracts on Ethereum as a layer 2 solution. And this allows people to build very secure smart contracts because Move is has a lot of security measures compared to like Solidity contracts. But let's talk about the story. Like this actually story started about like 2 years ago for me, where I got really involved in the Move ecosystem, and the Move language got my interest. So the language was built at Facebook, and then it spun off and then became open source. And it kind of sort of like the blockchain itself that kind of died down, but then the Move itself kind of was like people were like, "Hey, this is a very good language. We should like utilize." And then a few projects came out of that, and I was involved in like building projects for them. I knew something like should be like very this should be available to everyone. And then the more I got involved, the more like tools I built. Initially, I was actually more involved in like bringing the Ethereum onto Move ecosystem, and then interviewed a lot of folks. I built a really good project for like a year, and then got a little bit of interest. But then I realized that it wasn't really solving the right problem. It was kind of like the technology felt like it was kind of I was kind of pushing it and forcing it, and it just didn't feel right. And so what I decided to do is like I started to interview folks like, hey, we're building this thing, but what would you like to do? What would you like to change in the Move ecosystem? And what I heard over and over was, hey, we love the Move language, Move smart contract. We want to build Move in Move language, but we want it to be on Ethereum, running on Ethereum. And at first, that didn't make sense. I'm like, what does that even mean? Because Ethereum is Solidity based. You can't run Move on Solidity. I mean, how does that? Do you like rewrite Solidity to run Move? And like, or it just didn't make sense at first. And then, iterating over, listening to them, and then we just said that let's focus on building that, and then we'll figure out the technology. So and that's a good way of like to start a startup in general because you hear people, you hear the problem, you hear the impact, and then you build the technology based on the feedback, not the other way around. Usually the other way around doesn't work. And so we initially iterated on a few technologies. Like we actually started with like zero knowledge solution. We built an MVP that runs is using a ZK VM, running the entire Move VM in the ZK VM. It actually started to work, but it was just slow and it wasn't like performant enough. And then we thought about it a little more, and then we decided to kind of change the technology a little bit, because the idea wasn't to build like zk solution per se. It was just to help people like build move smart contracts on Ethereum. So that was the idea. So we were like kind of steering off to and getting stuck in technology again. So we decided to like kind of like decide to build something that works for users, and it's first of all, it works, it's performant enough, not performant, it's performant, and it provides all the security benefits of move. So once to get that done, we decided to kind of build it on Optimism's like OP stack, which allows us to build with kind of an build an optimistic rollup. But OP stack is modular enough to allow and be change the underlying execution model. So the execution layer can be swapped out with something else. So Optimism based, these are OP stack based blockchains, but they both run EVM execution. But EVM doesn't have to be there; it can be something else. So we decided to like change that with Move, and we play with it, and it works for us. And then we decided to like, you know what, we already started working on ZK before. We can plug in the ZK proof later and use it as a replacement for fraud proofs, so that the transaction finality can happen a lot sooner. So basically that's the story of our project. We're building it. We're getting really close to DevNet, and yeah, we're making good progress.
This is amazing. And like the logical question, we get this on the communities, on Telegram, on Twitter, and so on. The most logical question people would take a look at Move and ask is, why was the Move language chosen, right? But it pretty much comes the other way around, because you already had the Move language in mind, and the EVM ecosystem just kicked in, right? It was the other way around. So you already had Move, and the question would mostly be, why Ethereum, or why the EVM ecosystem? And there you go into Solidity, and maybe you address some Solidity flaws, or maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be flaws, but some weak points from Solidity that Move comes in really handy to solve those problems, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, so like when you're building a smart contract like by yourself, and like one smart contract, and you publish it, you're not going to have any issues because it's isolated, everything works. But the issue happens when smart contracts communicate and interact with each other, and that's the basics like of blockchain. That's what makes blockchain very powerful, because these smart contracts can interact with each other. Like you build an identity product protocol, and a DeFi protocol, and some other protocol, and these can interact with each other, and build like a bigger application. So the whole point of applications, these these smart contracts interacting with each other. But Solidity doesn't draw a line very clearly on how the resources between these interactions should be handled. So, but Move really solves that problem. It really clearly defines where the resources are, how they're supposed to be used, and it gives like a specific like read or write access to these basic resources. And because of that, it automatically like eliminates a lot of the issues that Solidity has. So there's so many like reentrancy issues. There's a lot of like fraud issues in Solidity, but Move doesn't have those problems because it's already very restrictive. Like for example, like let's say I'm sending you some a USDT token, and I got your address, Ethereum address, and I have a typo, and like they mistyped one of the characters, one of the address characters. Well,
God,
that transaction will go through, right?
I'm truly scared, man. Every time I copy an address and I paste it there, I check it like 27 times to see if I didn't type anything wrong, or if my money will not just vanish into thin air, right?
It's scary. I mean, to be honest with you, I like every time I like anytime I send over $100, I'm always scared. Like, is it actually gonna go? It's freaky, but like Solidity, the transaction will go through, and even if you mistype the address, it'll go through. But there's no private key for that account, so no one can receive that money. Basically, but it does go through, so you basically lost money. So that's a big problem. That's one problem. Like there's a lot of other problems, but in Move, it doesn't allow you to send it. The language itself doesn't allow it. You don't have to do as a developer do anything. So Basically, it protects you from these kind of like small errors, small issues. So the user experience is a lot better. Another thing is like, when developers build a smart contract and there's a problem in the smart contract, and it can be changed, it can be upgraded, it can be fixed, but until it gets fixed, within that time, like all the accounts can be drained from the account, because the smart contracts owns all the account resources, and that's how EVM works. But Move doesn't do that. Move actually separates the resources and it keeps them in accounts, and then but the smart contract is like a separate entity. Smart contract is like you send, I guess, you send, give you access to your resource when you send something, and then and then other person gives access, so it puts into that account basically. But if the smart contract is exploited, the accounts don't lose their resources. Just the smart contract just kind of has a problem. You upgrade it and you fix it. Everyone's pretty much happy, basically. So it eliminates all the nightmare issues what Solidity has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is pretty much a uniqueness, we could say, of Move Network, when you bring this strong points and like this all these solutions that the Move language offers into Ethereum, right? This would be, I guess, a huge competitive advantage when you talk about Move Network. And now, like for those who are not too tech savvy, what would be the best way to break it down, like really easy to understand? How Moved is exactly integrating the Move language into Ethereum's ecosystem. We went over this, but maybe in a bit technical terms, how would you explain this to a 5 year old? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we can talk about the modularity of the OP stack and how we're doing this. So basically, um, so there are four components. There are four components in the stack of the development stack of OP stack. So there's the sequencer, which is basically the one that receives the transactions, and it keeps them in order, and then sends those transactions to make sure everything is saved on Ethereum. So that actually goes through the sequencer sends the transactions onto an execution layer, so that this like transactions kind of like executed and to find the results of those executions, and then the results are sort of then batched into like as like a bulk, like instead of sending the one transaction, every transaction going to Ethereum one by one, you batch a bunch of transactions and then send them together as bulk into onto Ethereum. So the security is still the consensus, and the security is still on Ethereum layer, but you send them in batches. So like you kind of put all these transactions together, which means that you don't have to pay for individual transaction onto Ethereum. You can distribute that cost among all the transactions. So and then but when a user starts, so and then there's another component which is proposer, which is for the finality, the last component while the transaction is complete, to make sure that everything is final. That's another component. What we're doing is we're replacing, basically, to keep things very simple, we're replacing the execution layer. Instead of like Optimism stack, like getting an Ethereum transaction, it receives a Move transaction, and the Move transaction is sent off to this, like instead of sending it to like Ethereum execution EVM, we send it off to Move execution, and then we results comes back, and then the rest is kind of flows through it naturally. But from this is like the technology aspect, but there's also the user aspect. So from user aspect, basically a user sees like, hey, okay, I'm on my MetaMask. What do I do? So I have some, let's say I have some ETH on MetaMask. Okay, I want to use this protocol on Move Network. What do I do? Well, bridge your tokens Ethereum onto Move Network. Well, guess what? Move Network uses Ethereum as native token. So what you do is there's an Move Network, like has an layer one address. You send the bridge address, basically.
yeah,
You send your Ethereum, like let's say one Ethereum, onto the address, and within like 10, 15, pretty much like 15, 20 seconds, it just pops up and shows up on your wallet. Like you switch the network from Ethereum mainnet to Move Network mainnet. It pops up. Hey, you have one Ethereum on this Move Network, and you're ready to go. Basically, there's no like additional layer, like a day of waiting or 2 days of waiting. It's just kind of the native, like um, natively like supported. and
Yeah.
then you interact with it like you just like you interact with any other blockchain, any other like Ethereum blockchain. So it's like natively used, and then you pay for transactions based on Ethereum token, but it's a lot cheaper than Ethereum itself. Yeah, that's
So
how the interaction happens.
as easy as it can be. So, like you have native Ethereum, you use the native Move network bridge, then you have Ethereum on your Move wallet, and from there on, simply said, you are scaling Ethereum, reducing costs without sacrificing security, right? And this is simply brilliant. And now, like we were talking about, so we already recognize one huge competitive advantage of Move, but now we got into an important point. We're building on Optimism OP stack, right? So there you have also a lot of great projects which benefit from the optimistic part. But could we get into a little bit more of how the combination of the optimistic rollups and the ZK proofs will do this job of enhancing the scalability and the security? Could we get a bit like dive a bit deeper into that?
Definitely, yeah, yeah. That's a really good question. Like because all of this is like just the base bare base basics, basically bare minimum. Uh, but we want to advance the technology a little more, like because we did a little bit of work before on the ZK move competition. Because one thing to say is like ZK EVM is very complicated. It's just the EVM bytecodes. I'm going to go a little technical on this. The bytecodes, when you write Solidity code, but the Solidity is converted into bytecodes. And the bytecodes are like kind of like all over the place, meaning like they're high level, they're low level, um, kind of mid level. Like it just kind of varies. Like when you write programming languages, they're always converted, usually mostly converted into bytecode layer. And the bytecodes are usually low level. And but EVM has very complicated bytecode structure, so it makes it really hard for it to be converted to ZK execution. So, but Move is not like that. Move is actually Rust based, and everything is kind of like very converted to low level bytecodes, and these individual bytecodes can be converted into ZK. So that's how we're approaching it. So we actually started working on this a little bit. We're going to do more. But why? Like, what's the benefit, right? Just of sake. We're not doing it just for the sake of it. So one of the biggest issues, I would say, like the biggest issue in optimistic rollups, is the withdrawal time period, which is the one week that takes to withdraw anything from these blockchains, and that's the basically the fraud proof like timeline. So fraud proof is basically and kind of a negative thinking, like it's proven optimistically correct until a fraud is like submitted. Hey, there's a fraud for this transaction, but you need enough time for the people to like submit that fraud request. So people usually they give 1 week of time frame to have enough time to request that. I mean, you could lower it to like 3 days, but anything under like 1.5, 2 days is pretty much dangerous because there's not enough time to do that fraud proof. But the consequence of that is that when you send it, like let's say Ethereum, onto Optimism or any kind of optimistic rollup, and you want to like say send it back, like hey, I'm done, I want to take it back. You have to wait for 1 week to do that. The withdrawal time takes a week. So the alternative is to like say like hey, the reason why you need fraud proof is you need to make sure that these executions on these optimistic rollups are correct. So another way of doing this is like using a zero knowledge proof where you offload it to some other way of computing and then send that the execution was indeed correct using zero zk proof. So what you do is like you execute optimistically, and later you say, "Hey, asynchronously, I actually computed the zk proof for it. So this transaction was indeed correct." So then the finality can be done quickly. So we're looking at zk proof takes about, um, unlike worst case takes about 5 minutes. The best case, we measured it would be around like 50 seconds for now current technology with the current technology, but it's really improving. Within a year, we'll probably see like under like 5 seconds, 1 second, or even 1 second computation time. So what will happen for the users is like, hey, you send your transaction, you're like, hey, I want to withdraw this transaction with this whatever this transaction. I want this transaction to finalize quicker, basically, and then you send it off to the ZK computation. ZK computation will return a proof, and that proof will be used, say, hey, this transaction can be finalized right now. It doesn't have to wait for 1 week. And we can do it like, hybrid. We can do it all ZK. We can do it optimistic. So we can basically tune it kind of like with a knob, like, hey, every transaction is currently all optimistic with fraud proofs. And then, like, you know what? Some transactions are ZK proof based, but with a little bit of extra fees. And then, or once the ZK competition is like, very well, very fast, we can tune it all the way 100%. Like, hey, 100% of transactions go through this ZK proof. And this is going to benefit the other blockchains within the kind of super chain and Optimism. So I think we're going to benefit not just Move Network, but also the networks that are like working on the side, like together with that use OP stack in general.
Yeah, this is amazing. If you think about it, it's not just an ecosystem where each one tries to benefit just for himself, but it's everyone that it's like helping the whole super chain, right? The whole stack to get better and better, because at the end of the day, we're all thinking about onboarding users, right? And we cannot be fighting against each other and be like competitive and so on. It's much more about being collaborative and make it easy for the user, right? We cannot make it difficult for a user to bridge assets from one place to the other, or if he tries to use some DApp, sorry, and he gets freeze there because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to switch chains and so on. Like it has to be easy for everyone. But now we got this understanding of how it all works and why it is so good, why it is beneficial for people, for users, and for developers. But you mentioned we are now getting closer and closer to DevNet, and when we talk about DevNet, we cannot like forget about the devs, right? And so let's dive a bit deeper for developers, for people who are building, because we know the end goal is the user, right? But at the beginning we have to onboard some teams, some developers first, so there is things for users to do, right? So talking about this part of the rollup architecture for this, how does this translate in means of flexibility and continuous improvements, and how like the importance of this modularity, this modular architecture for continuing innovation when it comes to teams, to developers, to people building on there, what it's there for them to expect.
Yeah, yeah, it's really like the experience is very important, and we talk about a lot about um, we always mention about like how the users, existing Ethereum users, going to benefit from this technology. We really focus on that a lot, but also like how are the developers gonna are developers like sacrificing a lot to use this? Like, are they have to hop a lot of hoops or anything? Like, but the answer is no. So what we do is in short, we support we are probably the only blockchain that supports both existing different versions of Move in the market altogether, because the underlying technology is we are basically kind of converting almost the different, like, by different I mean like the Aptos and Sui has different versions of Move, and they have they're trying to like diversify, but underlying like bytecode execution for ZK, unlike bytecode like execution, but bytecode execution, the results of the that are stored in database, they're quite similar. They're, I would say, 100% the same. And so focusing on the similarities allows us to be able to support different versions of Move. Plus, maybe we'll come up with our own sort of like improvements on top of that, right? So the modularity is there, but from like the developer's perspective, it's basically like you write your Move contract, you build it, it converts, it generates bytecode, which is like bytecode is basically the way it's going to work, and then you deploy it like it's an Ethereum transaction. Not like not like an Aptos or Sui transaction. You deploy it like an Ethereum transaction, which majority of developers are familiar with this. Like they use Hard Hat. We have an Hard Hat plugin just for this. So it kind of converts, compiles the Move code, but then you send it like an Ethereum transaction to the Move network. We recently built that actually, and then when it comes to like using, as again, like you send your transactions like just like you send it to Ethereum. But the execution itself, the security and all that of the smart contract is handled for developers as like a move transaction. But then the way like you build a web SDK, web program, web application, like a DApp, basically decentralized application, is like you interact with the way with like similar existing tools like there's Ethos.js and a few like SDKs for web platform and native platforms. So you're going to be using the same platform, and we'll provide like the compilation and kind of different parts in our SDK. So we really make it like easy to use, but also easy to use for not just like one version of Move, but like different versions, different variations of Move. So we try to make it like a very like kind of like modular, but like comprehensive Move layer for developers.
Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned like maybe the both of the most known blockchains nowadays when you think about move blockchains, right? Aptos and Sui, they're really famous. A lot of people are building there, and their tokens, the Sui token, the last few days has caused a lot of ups and downs in the market, and a lot of people are talking. And when we're talking about Aptos and Sui, how could we differentiate or how could we set apart the approach of those two blockchains of the move based interoperability and differ this from the moved networks approach? How does this differ? Because I think like what everyone has in mind nowadays is the like how crucial interoperability is when you think about this, like this the integration with other chains, with other platforms that we were talking before, like because this is continuously more and more important for users. So how does the approach of move differ from those other blockchains like Aptos and Sui and others that may be in the market?
Yeah. So yeah, very good question, and that's the kind of the core. That's the core principles that we have. Is like a lot of these blockchains, and it's not just Aptos or Sui. They're great blockchains, and they're in order to like improve certain aspects of a blockchain, they kind of isolate that blockchain, improve that, and then send it to bring it to the market, basically. That's one approach. We're not doing that. We're doing more like we're saying no to isolation, meaning like we don't want to create new wallets because like we have enough wallets. We don't want to create like new ways of like SDKs. There's already like hundreds of millions of users on Ethereum. So like we want to target the existing users on Ethereum, but we want to fix the problem of solidity. So that's our approach. So our number one principle is like we say no to isolation. Any kind of like isolated like approach, we just say no to it. And these blockchains like try to focus on isolation. Like every tool, every project needs to be rebuilt for that. So it's a different approach that we're taking. We're actually sacrificing some of the from some of the like uh, benefits, the innovation in blockchain space, just to make sure that it works out of the box with the existing platforms and existing tools. Like we use Optimism of the OP stack, and I think like for instance like OP stacks like block time, there's an innovation that just can be improved. Even like we can improve it, tune it, make it faster. But if we do that, we lose the aspect of interoperability in the super chain, and that's a big cost. We believe it's more valuable to provide the interoperability with existing chains than improve us, but like kind of stay away from the other chains. So like our approach is to be within the existing ecosystem. And when we think about like the team too, like you probably do the same thing. Like when you approach this like marketing from the marketing aspect, the design aspect, the development aspect, we try to make sure that we have that like no isolation principle going forward, and so that when you make decisions we keep that always in mind, meaning like when we develop like the Sui SDK versus like Aptos SDK, like support both compilations, like when we say no isolation, right? Well, we have to do both. It needs to be compatible with both, basically.
Yeah.
And so we believe that initially we're going to be a good use case for the super chain. Later I think Move Network is going to be like a good hub for connectivity onto the Ethereum ecosystem for other Move blockchains. Kind of be like a kind of hub to open up to the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, that's what we think.
Yeah, amazing. I really got hooked in the part that you said that we kind of exclude any hypothesis where it contains isolation, right? Because we need to be together with other people. It's like having a good neighborhood, right? You are always like well related to each other, and then like you always you never know when you will need to cooperate with someone. So it's always best to keep the doors open, right? So now talking about this proximity with other chains, this interoperability, and not being isolated from anyone, would you say that this helps Move Network to tackle the problem of liquidity that sometimes people have in their chains? Like, because this is really important, right? The liquidity flows make a difference when you, I don't know, like if you imagine using any protocol, any DeFi part or any blockchain part of any chain, you will always fall in the part of liquidity and being connected, being interoperable. It's really important tackling that. So how would you address this part of this interoperability now? Focus on the importance of liquidity flows.
100%. I mean, you describe it really well. Like, when you try to focus on the technology and like you isolate everything from everything, well, you're creating problems of liquidity, right? So like just like you described it. So well, by not doing that, we're including, basically we're more inclusive, being more inclusive to existing users, and existing users means more liquidity for the chain. So like one aspect is like, bridge, right? So like, let's say, when you create a new blockchain like on its own, in order to bring a liquidity, you kind of have to do this on ramp meaning like, someone puts in their like bank account information and to like put in the money to purchase some of the tokens so that they can start using it through some decentralized exchange or like centralized exchange or directly. And so uh, you have to create this, right? But while we don't need to do that because we have a bridge that already exists on Ethereum. Like you have Ethereum, right? I have Ethereum. So just send it over to this bridge address and voila, in like 20 seconds it shows up on Move Network. I mean, it's how easy is that, right? You start right away. So yeah, it really eliminates these like issues of liquidity, user base. So I used to say this basically, this weird analogy, like, where you have like a chicken and an egg problem, right? You have to like, which comes first? So does the chicken come from, like, when you have a blockchain, isolated blockchain, you have this like chicken and egg problem. Like let's say egg is the developers, the chicken is the users, right? But you need to create both. You need to create this marketplace on both aspects, right? Both ecosystems. But for us, we don't have to focus on that. We can, because we're part of the Ethereum ecosystem. We already have a lot of chickens, like your chicken, basically. Like we already have that, like 100 millions of users already there. We just need to make it easier for them, and then we believe the egg, the other part, will come in and then kind of will be built because there's so much demand from users to use this. The developers will come in and like build it. So that's what we believe, and so I think that's going to eliminate a lot of like requirements for liquidity, and that's a good thing for like, for an ecosystem, like, super easy to use, super familiar to use, and simpler UX. Plus, it's quick. There's no third party like solutions. You just use existing, like our own, bridge, like that is battle tested for 3 years by Optimism. So having these like built in is gonna eliminate a lot of the issues, we believe. So, and we're gonna see. I think we're like structured our infra software system, like basic blockchain system. I think we're very well to like onboard, eliminate these like onboarding issues.
Yeah, it makes total sense. When we are talking about this, like I already got the click in my mind. We are an early stage platform. We are still developing. We are, as we said, yet to launch the DevNet and after that mainnet and so on. And when we are talking about like getting to the market and starting up with in structured form, we will always face and or like whether we like it or not, we have to think about traction, right? traction, get things working, and so on. So here, for those who are paying attention to the conversation here, we can already highlight some points that we could definitely tie to traction here, which would be like native bridges, using ETH as the native currency, having interoperability and closeness to other chains, and because of that benefit of liquidity flows and so on. Do you have like anything else to share, or that you think about would be an highlight of how Moved Network would address the challenge of ecosystem traction that any chain would face in the beginning phases?
Yeah. So I'll just talk about a few things. So one thing we're doing different, I would say, is we're kind of following the Ethereum model where we allow others to build even the basic like infrastructure tools. Like when you first like have this like NFT creation, like no code NFTs, emerging marketplaces, and things like that. So sometimes a lot of the companies or blockchains, like they built these things themselves, and it kind of doesn't open up the space for innovation. They kind of do everything themselves, and then which, because it makes sense that you have a very strong development team. You know what you want, and you want to kind of build the way you want it. Yeah, but it kind of makes it boring for the developers. Like, hey, I was gonna build that thing. Why did you do that before me? Like the naming space, like that .eth naming space, for instance. Like all of these and Ethereum are built by the community. So we want to follow the same structure, meaning like we wanted the community to like build and then build these tools so that there will be like a little bit of competition between like different tools, and then they can compete with each other and build the best tool, and also innovate and create the newer tools. So we really want to do that. So we really want to like support like hackathons and accelerator programs. So we'll kind of want to work with them, and also like not step in there, like not step over to their territory, meaning like it's not a territory, but like let them innovate, like let people like, and we focus on the blockchain. Well, let us innovate on the blockchain space, provide zk proof, provide fast interoperability, and the future of like layer secure layer 2. But let the ecosystem build the and innovate and experiment with a lot of like new applications instead of us building it. I think that's like a better way of approaching this structure. So I think we're going to do that. So we really encourage like folks to like build, and once we launch the devnet, really like start building. It's going to be very soon, like within a few months. Basically, we're talking about like a few months, not like a year or two. Very short time frame. We want to launch right away. As soon as like it's ready, we're gonna launch it, and then people will build it, experiment it, and it's like, hey, it's similar to users. I mean, you're not gonna see the difference between an Ethereum uh, blockchain versus Move Network. So you might as well just use Move Network, right? So we kind of encourage people like to do that, and then we want to go like a little light on the push, but let the community kind of build and then improve, and then kind of add innovative solutions. Even if it's something we could do easily, we still want the community to build it. So that's our approach.
This is amazing. And now, if we wrap up what the listeners had the opportunity to learn until now, we see that it came from a clear problem, from a clear thing that you wanted to solve. It came with a clear vision of how to leverage Move and its capabilities to do that. We got through the how we will address the traction, how we will address neighborhood with other chains and so on. And now you got a bit into some things that may let some listeners a bit curious, which are like the part of in the future launching DevNet, having hackathons, and there a lot of people come with the questions of like ambassador programs and what is next, and do we have timelines and so on. So now looking a bit ahead and with what we have in hand right now, what is happening, and what should the user or a developer or someone who is simply interested in Move Network expect for the next, I don't know, months or years? And what milestones? Do we have any milestone in sight yet? Is there any possibility of giving a timeline, or is it a bit abstract? What are we looking at from for the next steps, like maybe DevNet launch and so on? What can a user expect there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm gonna send it back to you. I want to hear your thoughts on the marketing efforts because we really want to make some changes there too. So in the short term, we're looking for a very short term goal, DevNet launch, and DevNet meaning like we will allow basically like developers and users to kind of play with it. And start playing and reporting the bugs and issues. We want to make sure that what we promise at the base of like different versions of Move to be able to be usable, and also the storage of the data, transactions going through a very familiar like interface through like Ethereum tools and all that. All this stuff working in a very like the bridging working, everything kind of working very smoothly. So that's the promise we want to make and provide the blockchain with that. And then later we're looking for like improving that, and then tapping going into like the testnet launch. And from like testnet launch, we want to actually start working on the ZK proof as well. So we're going to probably spin off a team to just work on that, dedicated team for that. And then by mainnet, we want to have like generate a token for create a token for our project, and the token is going to be in the beginning. It's going to be a governance token because the fees are based on Ethereum token, so there's no utility token yet. But when we move into like the ZK proof computation, it needs a trusted set of computation to be able to, if we decentralize it, we can kind of decentralize the ZK computation for the proof that can use some utility tokens separately. We don't want to promise that right away, but we can do that. So that's something we're working on the product side. On the business side, we're working on the basically the partnerships with like the interoperability with Optimism Superchain. So they're very excited about this because we're like only like alternative VM to be able to like run within the Optimism superchain. So that's going to create like a new exciting opportunities, like meaning like, hey, you have like ZK proof. Instead of waiting your withdrawal from like Optimism, you can send it transfer your assets onto Move Network and then withdraw from there. So that's like a whole new like way of thinking of applications. And so like we're gonna experiment with that. So we want to like improve, like work with our partners on that, partnerships with like ambassadors, partner ambassadors, and then incubation programs and other things. And the third thing is the ecosystem. Like how do we improve our ecosystem? Like how do we make sure that we're more open to folks and everyone to like be able to like improve the our project and hear from them to make sure we're building the right thing. And this is kind of, I want to hear your thoughts on this a little bit, Martin. Like, because I kind of dedicated you to drive this drive this kind of aspect of like ecosystem growth and engine, but it just kind of it evolves, right? It's not just a one way of do everything right now. Like all, it's a better like a more natural to do like what needs to be done right now is probably going to be different than like in a few months and then a few months after that, right? So like the growth of the marketing aspect, the growth of the ecosystem aspect. So we want to focus on these three things overall. But I would love to like hear your thoughts on the marketing aspect of what you're thinking, how you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
contribute to.
It makes total sense because all of those aspects, the development part, the business part, and the marketing part, they are totally complementary. So, if we take a look at where we are now, we are in the phase of raising awareness, right? So we were born just a few months ago. We are now already developing and going like full speed to as you said launch devnet as soon as possible. So at the moment we are focused on telling the world who we are, and that is why I would encourage all the listeners here to listen to the other episodes and to join us in the next ones, because you may not be aware but you are highly important, and you are here in a really early stage. So you being here with us and listening to us and being with us in our other socials. By socials, I mean Twitter, I mean Telegram, I mean Discord, and so on. Being aware and being a part of this. By this, you are getting like the earliest updates. You are getting like the best spots to be positioned. And if you are a developer, if you are a future user, and so on, we always say like in any project, the early supporters, the early developers, they will always be remembered, and they will it's the famous saying, right? The early bird gets the worm. So yeah, So basically, connecting to your question, what we're doing right now is raising awareness, right? So our page on Twitter started like a few months ago. I don't know, like maybe 2 months ago, and we are now crossing already the 5K mark. That we have already a nice community there. We are getting like full speed to cross 10K, to cross 15K, and wherever it takes us, because we are, as we said, making a good neighborhood with other projects, may it be on Twitter, may it be on Telegram, and whoever enters there, whoever has any question, like in Telegram, we have two mods that are totally dedicated, like almost 24 hours a day to answer your question. If you get there and if you ask like whatever you want to know, there is no such thing as a dumb question, right? Every question is a question. And if you want to like just know what move is, what we do, what are our plans, what stage we are at right now, if you just like drop a comment in any random tweet, you will be answered. If you get into the Telegram and ask any question, you will be answered. If you get into Discord and speak with anyone, you will be answered, right? So this is our phase right now: gather the community, show the world who we are, and start already making this good partnership, this good neighborhood with other protocols, because in the future they will not just be our neighbors, they will be our partners, right? We will have interoperability with them, we will have things going on, synergy with them, and also things in common with them, and things that we will be different but complementary, right? We will solve their pain, we will solve our pains. And like at the end, it's just a huge community called Ethereum, right? It's just a huge community called crypto. So we are here like to have a good synergy with other protocols, with other people, with developers, with teams, with ambassadors, with moderators, and so on. And as long as we evolve in these steps, in this roadmap, when we launch DevNet, we will start having programs for the early supporters. We will have starting we'll have like rewards for those who help us develop, who help us find bugs, who have like good insights on how to improve, how to better serve developers, how to better serve users. And after DevNet, it's mainnet. So there, like in the beginning, we will need an inflow of developers, right? So this is mostly what we are focused on right now. Going back to the first question, right? What we are doing right now, what is our goal right now? Is to gather as much as good people as we can, and this is why we are doing this podcast, right? It's to raise awareness, is to have people, is to explain, because at first sight it can be complicated. We know that, we get it, everyone in crypto gets it. Like anyone who takes a look at this and is not familiar with this will have difficulties, will have a hard time understanding like what even is move language, man, what is solidity, what is a white paper, right? It's for those who are in touch with this already. It can be like a super basic, a super elementary thing, but for a newcomer, he needs a helping hand, right? And we are here. Like this is the main thing that we always talk about. We always encourage, be a part of it, be a part of it as you can. If you are just a newcomer to this, okay, welcome, ask your questions, let's participate, let's talk, drop your questions, drop your doubts, let's speak about it, let's address it. And if you have like, I don't know, you are starting to develop and you are looking for a new chance, like you got it, it's here, it's all yours, take it and do the best of it, right? So taking a look at where we are right now and where we want to go, this is a clear line. It's always about awareness, it's always about being responsive, right? This is it's always about keep moving. That's why our main symbol is an airplane, right? It's a thing that goes fast, goes high, it's secure, and takes a lot of people with it in the same time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it really well. And we're gonna look back into this time and like, wow, we're gonna grow, and then we're gonna look back and like we're gonna be so proud of our like initial engagement. And like you said, like we just want to be more open, and this is the purpose of like having these conversations, to show ourselves to be more open. Exactly. I love the way you describe it. I love everything you said. Sounds exactly right.
Yeah, we are visualizing it, man. We know that it's going to be a nice thing. We know it's going to solve a lot of pains and bring in a lot of good people. There will be opportunities, and there will be space for pretty much everyone who's interested in it, right? But now, before we wrap up, before we get like to close this conversation, is there any specific message? Like, I already left my message here. I already invited everyone to be a part of this and so on. But is there any specific message you would like to leave to the listeners about Move Network, about the future of Move, or of blockchain as a whole? What would you like to say to them? How would you like them to get involved or be a part of this?
100%, yeah. So I really want to people like to be open to the accept the idea of like more secure blockchains for the future, and we really want people like follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter or X handle is like at moved network. Moved like past tense moved, at moved network. Follow us there. And then also on Telegram, again at moved network on Telegram. We've published a lot of updates, internal updates, what we're thinking and how we're thinking about Move and Ethereum and all this stuff. Also, what we're developing internally, we've published that. So really follow us on Move Network socials. We also have a Discord channel. We have basically kind of expanding slowly. So yeah, keep updated, keep yourself up to date on the our socials at Move Network. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this was like the perfect way for users to understand who we are, where we're at. So starting on how the idea came, how it was visualized, how it was iterated through continuous feedback with people building, with people who've already felt some things that the ecosystem was lacking, people who had it in first person, right? And after that, testing a few things, optimizing a few things, how to leverage optimistic rollups, how to leverage ZK proof, and so on. So, and getting like to the point that we are now, which is like really close to DevNet launch and what is coming next. I think it couldn't be more clear. So, I would like really to thank you for this comprehensive answers, for sharing your thoughts and being like really open about moved, about the next steps, about where it came from, and so on. And the thing is, I would like to leave a clear message here. It's been like almost an hour of conversation. Here's a ton of information, right? But we know it does not answer all the questions someone might have in mind, and that is why we will encourage again. If you still have any doubt, if you still have any question, join us at Telegram at Move Network. Drop your questions there. Follow us on Twitter at Move Network again, and drop any question you have in any post right there. We shared recently our development updates. We have comprehensive threads and tweets explaining what Move is doing, who we are, what we are solving. We have easy tutorials on how to get to the documentation, how to get to the white paper, what does anything there mean, and so on. And I would like also to thank the audience for being with us today, to listening to the podcast. And I will also like to encourage them to look at the other episodes because it's the sixth episode of Genesis Podcast. It means we have already like 5 episodes full of knowledge, full of useful information on other aspects of blockchain, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been like real world assets tokenization. It's been we had a guest in the last episode of a betting sports company and so on. We have different aspects, which is also really good for understanding. So if you are, I don't know, like washing the dishes, if you are driving, or if you are taking the bus, taking the train, or just relaxing by the pool, it's also a nice thing to have, like playing in the background, always learning more about blockchain and learning more about Move Network, because we are here to bring something nice to all of you. And
There's
yeah,
always something to learn from those episodes. Like you pick up some knowledge. You feel better. Like we really go deep into the conversation, and we're gonna keep doing this. I mean, I will probably let you'll do it or I'll do it. We'll do more of these like episodes of like going into deep into these blockchain technology and explaining in nice terms. So there's a lot to learn from these episodes. Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, thank you all for watching, and thank you, Bulent, for this comprehensive answers, for this nice conversation, and waiting for the next one, man.
Yeah, nice talking to you, and nice to talking like about our project and also having exposing ourselves to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.